Joining our webinar today on behalf of Gordon Research and Longevity Plus. Our host today is Dr. Gary Gordon. Dr. Gordon is an expert on nutrition, mineral metabolism, and longevity. He serves as full-time consultant for Longevity Plus, a nutritional supplement company based in Payson, Arizona, where he is responsible for designing effective, natural, non-toxic alternative supplements for the treatment of every disease known to man. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Gary Gordon.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to have the topic today able to be discussed in depth, because this is a key part of our staying healthy. And when we realize that Suzanne Somers' great book on bioidentical hormones and the sexy years has changed the face of aging in America, so we are pleased that she has woken us up to the fact that we have to do something if we're going to enjoy the longer lives that we all now expect to have. In other words, if we're all going to live to 90, we really need to know what things can we take every day, year in and year out, that will support our getting to age 90 without the problem of broken bones, depression, and the other issues that go along with what we call the menopause, but it's really today going to be more the problem of aging. So here we have a miracle herb from Thailand, and it turns out, as you will see today, that this actually is a true miracle. But we know that even some of the most powerful cancer drugs today came from plants. And so what we have here is an area north of Thailand that is the only place that this plant grows naturally. And it has actually been a staple of the diet in this area for many years. And we've learned a great deal about this term, Pueraria mirifica. And this is what it looks like. It almost looks like a sweet potato. And it can become quite large. And we can see that the people in rural communities have used these roots as a rejuvenating folk medicine for many, many years. And they've always had this noticed that it would alleviate sleep disorders. It seemed to help blood circulation. It helps with memory loss. When we get into how this is working at a molecular level, you will find why I feel that this truly is a gift from nature to all of us, because we now know that there are estrogen receptors throughout our body, and these receptors have been getting various signals because we live today in an era in which all of us carry a tremendous load of toxins. We ingest at least 10 pounds of chemical, pesticides, insecticides, etc., every single year simply through eating and obtaining fluids. So we've got this interesting story that those receptors that are trying to give our body helpful messages have what we now recognize as endocrine disruptors, particularly those that are estrogenic, like the PCBs and the dioxins. And so there's a story here that by using this herb as a regular part of your diet, you may see benefits, which we will outline for you here. The very first noted in writings goes back about 700 years ago. And they mentioned then that women would start to menstruate again when they started taking that, which is kind of a fear issue today, but that would be something that we'll go through these slides so you'll understand exactly what will and will not occur with the use of taking this natural product and the dosages that we will be recommending. But I like this idea that aging men become strong again and young. So there's many, many kinds of Pueraria, and the reason we have to go into this in little detail is because once you understand how good this product is, you're going to understand why many people will try to knock it off and claim that they have the same thing. So there was a lot of work involved in trying to bring this to the American population. We actually work with Smith Naturals. They are the company in Bangkok, Thailand, headed by Dr. Sandy Schwartz, who was a partner of Dr. Robert C. Atkins, my now long deceased friend. And Dr. Schwartz, as the director of Smith Naturals, is the one that has spearheaded the 10-year effort to bring this product in a reliable form affordably to the American population. And in the process of doing that years ago, we thought we would be able to simply have it sold in every health food store as a treatment for menopause, which would mean it would have been a medical food making a claim for what we believe it can do. And this is part of the effort where we had the top people in the Department of Medical Sciences in Thailand compose a letter to our FDA to explain that for over 30 years the scientists in Thailand have been studying the safety of the praeria because it was widely used in Thai traditional medicine. And they've done all of these acute, subacute, chronic studies, and so we know on various, we will show you today the data so that we are very aware that this is a very powerful story we're about to talk about, because if we still look at the market right now for substances like Premarin is still probably well over $1 to $2 billion, even though the Women's Health Initiative came out with the very sad news that there seemed to be an increase of both heart disease and cancer in women getting the pregnant mare urine. But they were still doing it because they were so uncomfortable with their health issues, and doctors were persuaded to continue to use the pregnant mare urine or other forms of prescription hormones because of the ability to help prevent bone loss. Because after all, in a simple 10-year period, an average woman going from age 50 to age 60 will shrink an entire inch. And so we have to deal with the problem of bone loss. And that's therefore why many people are going to be very happy when they see the entire presentation today and realize how much documentation we have. So there's always somebody that's going to have a different kind of praeria, and they're going to confuse people. And we have, fortunately, high-pressure liquid chromatography. And I've gone out to BioBotanica in the East Coast and met with Dr. Joseph Mirem, who is the world expert at identifying each of the active ingredients found in the purestrol, which is the active, stabilized, and standardized material now being used by Longevity Plus in the HRT product, which is herbal remedy from Thailand. So there's a lot of complex materials to know, and there's a lot of writings about the identification of what is this active factor, and because there's a lot of commercial interest in people wanting to find another source to copy this, that we've got a lot of details. We'll give you a brief introduction here. A preliminary report with some of the top doctors that I've worked with when I am in Bangkok, published in the Journal of the Medical Association of Thailand, gives you an idea that the Thai herbal scientific study looks at the efficacy. That means, does this stuff do something that would be interesting for you? Would it have some benefits? And if you were getting those benefits, would it be safe? So the health benefits are very important to understand. Praeria contains several kinds of phytoestrogens: myristrol, deoxymerestrol, genistin, diadsin, genistin, coumadin. These phytoestrogens will bind to estrogen receptors like estrogen does, with varying degrees of affinity, giving different estrogenic potency. Now remember, in everybody we test today, if you send your blood, which I hope all of you could afford to do, to Mount Sinai School of Medicine, and sent the 20 tubes of blood, it did the big panel of toxins in your body. All of us have endocrine disruptors. We all have PCBs and dioxins. So we already have things that are trying to affect these very estrogen receptors, and here we're putting a good guy in that is not a toxin, that tries to offset, because we know that we have 7- and 8-year-old girls today fully sexually developed because of these complex messages that these chemicals that are in our bodies today are causing. So remember, at the top of the page, the good news is that we're all going to live longer. It's clearly that the graying of America is going to happen, and that I'm only 74 now, and we're expecting to be active at 94 and older. Now, if we're going to have pruriria and its phytoestrogens going throughout the body, what kind of benefits could we have? Well, because it turns out that we are talking about a selective estrogen receptor modulator. That's SERM, and it only functions primarily on the beta receptor. We can look for some very wonderful benefits as a result of ingesting this phytoestrogen material. These benefits will include a marked decrease of hot flashes, better sleep, less depression, less vaginal dryness, less broken bones, and less loss of memories, as we'll get into with some of the evidence. But in addition to that, there's always been the interest about reducing heart disease. Now, of course, with Longevity Plus, as a medical director here, I state unequivocally that people lucky enough to take the Beyond Chelation Improved 9 pills that we developed in the 60s, working with Dr. Lester Morrison at the Arteriosclerosis Research Institute at Loma Linda, with $10 million worth of funding, we developed Beyond Chelation Improved, and there has not been a single reported fatal stroke or heart attack in anybody taking those 9 pills. So I don't operate in an atmosphere of fear about heart disease, but I'm very open to the fact that people with healthier levels of the right hormone activities will have less heart disease. And I want to have a simple goal. At age 90, I want everybody who follows my suggestions to have hard bones and soft arteries. It's clear today that the opposite occurs routinely. The average autopsy on anybody at age 85 has 1,000 times more calcium in many of our tissues than we did when we were young. And so when this building up of calcium, which is monitored today by your cardiologist using the high-speed CAT scan, they see the level of calcium in your vascular tissues. You want no calcium in your arteries because you want soft arteries. But they never put the two things together. The bone loss, when it's leaving the bones, it seems to find a new home on your arteries. So we need to learn about why. I have been so excited about vitamin K2 and have put it in the Beyond Bone formula. So what we're talking about today is a total change in the way we face the aging process, because let's look at the facts. Weak bones are found in most women by 50, and it gets weaker and weaker. And the problem is we can easily monitor these today with simple tests. You can have your bone density test, and you can order and ask your doctor to tell you how much calcium is in your coronary vessels. So let's just remove all the calcium out of your arteries so they stay soft, and let's keep your bones as strong as they were when you were 18. Now, the revolution that Suzanne Summers brought about with bioidentical hormones is kindly based on the safest of the 3 estrogens. We have in this article the fact that estriol is one of the key parts of the bioidentical hormone revolution. And it does show that there's, even on estriol, you still have a little problem. You'll have a few more polyps, etc. But if you talk to the director, Joel Evans, at the medical school, he will identify for you that because even estriol is still going to have to be handled in your body to avoid the potential of increasing cancer or increasing heart attacks, that's why I'm so excited that we can now offer people who've been helped by a bioidentical therapy, but they're going to start looking at what do they want to do for the next 20, 30 years. If we're going to live to 90, we're going to be doing things for a long time. And I think 90 may be the young. We may be living to 120, but if we look then at estriol has been clearly a benefit, and it has been used in this revolution because it is clearly a safer form of estrogen. It's gotten people off the pregnant horse urine, which I really appreciate. And we need to see in here that BioIdentical is the company in America that had the ability to standardize and identify and produce a standardized formula which can be safely used by everybody. So this is when we get into the technicals. But the active factor turns out to be myristoyl and deoxymyristoyl, and this is where the story gets interesting, because on the left-hand side you can see on the very top a chemical configuration, and the next one down is estriol, and you'll see that they're almost identical. So as usual, nature seems to always be ahead of us and always has what we need. So the people looking at bioidentical hormone therapy need to know from this slide that we've spent the time and the money, because I've met with the Thailand Research Council, and I've met with top MD, PhDs, even people, we have top doctors in Bangkok that really understand molecular medicine, and we've done some very exciting studies showing anti-cancer-like effects. So that's an astonishing thing. It sounds finally as though you might be able to have, what's the old saying, have your cake and eat it too? That would be what you would be doing if we can give you the benefits that hormones have been proven to give, and I am a strong advocate of using hormones correctly as we age. And I think that many of us are going to wind up using many hormones as we want to stay as active as possible when we're 80 and 90, because it takes so long in this world to know something. It's a shame to snuff your life out at 70 needlessly, when simply understanding the nutritional anti-aging amino acid, vitamin, mineral, mucopolysaccharide, herbal, hormonal support program that I call anti-aging, my personal program for what I take every day, will be available to see on the website. So you can see I practice what I preach, because I didn't have good health as a child. I have many, many health problems. The list goes on and on. Don't want to bore you with that, but I want to make it clear that this is an exciting story, because this natural product has the highest estrogenic activity, and yet it's a safe estrogen. It isn't going to give cancer. In fact, it appears from the studies being done by Margaret Ritchie, who has in the past been at St. Andrews Medical School in Scotland and is world authority on estrogen receptors, and has done the research on the purestrol, which is the name for the product that has the studies behind it, so that you know you're getting the right material. And he has been able to, we've been able to see with Margaret Ritchie studies that actually this appears that one day it may be used in the treatments of certain cancers. But with the studies that I saw when I was in Bangkok, it was giving all of the anti-proliferative, that means stopping the growth of those cancer cell lines in the studies we were doing on cell cultures, that we were clearly seeing then the same effect as people being told they need tamoxifen. So it's astonishing that we can find a natural product that appears to do the benefits you will see as we go through these slides, and have none of the risks that we normally would have associated with anything that would have provided that kind of benefit. So we're very similar to estriol, which is the active part of what is called hormone therapy. We know that 45 million women in the United States will right now be found to be in menopause. Some of them are lucky. They have few symptoms. That doesn't mean they're not losing bone. That doesn't mean they're not losing brain cells, because this ties to your memory. When you understand what is going on at estrogen receptors throughout our body, the man's prostate is loaded with estrogen receptor sites, as well as, I repeat, our bones and our brain and heart. And so as we start to find out about estrogen receptors, you're going to see why this is a great story. And a lot of people are not going to get the right answers, and a lot of them are not going to be not able to afford to be on the bioidentical hormones, which require the doctors to monitor, because there is still Joel Evans at Albert Einstein Medical School pointing out that he believes that genetically we are disposed, that even with that even using bioidentical hormones, we're still pushing women toward increased cancers and or increased heart disease, depending on genetics. And we don't want to spend the money to do genetic testing on everybody. That's why I like all natural. Here I don't have to do any of that testing, and I can look for the benefits. Now we do find that women clearly did see an increase in breast size in previous studies, and that was often associated with topical use. And we do know that when you are in menopause, you'll tend to get high levels of things like FSH and LH because your body is trying to accommodate to the fact that you've gone into menopause. And amazingly enough, we can bring all those levels back to normal, but not see any effects we didn't want when we have people on the correct form of purestrol. So if we look at human studies, it's interesting to see that these are problems that a group of women put on a program. Some of them had back pain, some had urinary frequency, and some of them had dry vagina, loss of sex interest, etc. But if you look across this line, the loss of interest in sex was 2.6, and at the end of 6 months it was 0.6, meaning that you've reduced by a dramatic figure the number of people who had lost interest in sex, which is bad because when you've lost interest in sex, we tend to age earlier. So there's a reason that if you look at any of these things, the dry vagina was 2.5 and it came down to 0.2, dramatic. In fact, we're talking to very large pharmaceutical companies that are interested in putting this purestrol that we're able to offer you now in HRT into a vaginal preparation because there is so much problem that people need a personal lubricant. As they age, they're not able to enjoy sex. But here, whether we do it topically, which is what they saw as the immediate market, because people are open to a personal lubricant, and as soon as they put the purestrol into the product, immediately you'll start to see the vagina skin start to flourish as it did when we were younger. But if we look across the hot flashes, we went from 2.8 down to 0.2. The night sweats, again, now this is all based on reports of women in Thailand. Amazingly enough, they don't have quite the exposure to some of the chemicals that we find in the American population, and they do not consume the same amount of sugar, so that it is tougher for me to get these dramatic results on an average American woman than it is for me to get these results when I'm in Asia. And it is quite interesting, and I can tell you that until I have the American population beginning to understand the adverse effects of the chemicals that are in your tissues right now, and there isn't anybody listening to me today who could pass the test. It's documented. Anybody we did in the United States is loaded with everything from flame retardants called polybrominated diphenyl ethers to the PCBs and the dioxins, and the list goes on and on. And so when you look at people who can't lose weight, you're going to find eventually that part of the inability to lose weight is tied to the load of chemicals, and eventually the day will come that it'll be very fashionable to learn how does Dr. Gordon get all the mercury, all the lead, all the dioxins and PCBs out of patients. And that's my total detox kit, which we'll explain to you in another time, because right now we want to focus on the exciting story that we've got the data to show that FSH and LH did not fluctuate when we gave the Praria in normal people, but it will lower in postmenopausal women who had elevated levels. So we have a lot of data then that allows us to be sure that we are not giving you a pure estrogen effect, which is important because this slide reminds us that in 2002, everybody was stunned with the fact that what doctors had been telling you, which was take Premarin, it's great for you, be on the progesterones, be on all these, and they said, oops, looks like we're wrong. They had to stop the study because it clearly was increasing the incidence of cancer and heart attacks. So since then, there's been a lot of people looking back, trying to figure, well, what are we going to do? And obviously, with a market involving billions of dollars, there will be a lot of going back and saying, maybe we pulled the trigger too fast. Maybe we shouldn't have abandoned the study. Maybe there were still some benefits hiding in the use of the pregnant mare urine and or other pharmaceutical levels of hormones. But my point is very simple. Who needs them as long as I can have you feeling as good as I feel, and I can do it without any risk? That's where I'm going. And so I want to make it clear. that we can call quacura is another name for praria. And it does not cause cancer. And we have a lot of excellent documentation on that point. And so the National Committee was funded to support, and because they had to know, because when Thailand looks at this as a potential product to export to the world, there's been a tremendous amount of research going on here. None of this that we're talking about has been lightly done. As I repeat, it's over 10 years, and if you were to look at the data, the stack of data would be over 2 feet deep that we've submitted to the FDA in an effort to try to get them to allow this to become called a medical food so that everybody would know when they picked the bottle up in the health food store that they were buying something that was proven to have benefits in menopause. And here you get into this study that it inhibits estrogen-dependent breast cancer cells. That's just an amazing fact. There's all these women today who are told that they have estrogen-dependent breast cancer, and therefore they can never take any hormones the rest of their lives. And you're condemning them to premature aging. If you don't take any hormones, you're going to be losing bones. You're going to also lose brain cells. It's dramatically interesting to find how few broken bones there are in northern Thailand and how few people are admitted for Alzheimer's and senility and dementia in northern Thailand. It would be a total change of the healthcare costs of our nation. Remember, at age 85, according to the Alzheimer Research Foundation, 1 out of 2 will have Alzheimer's in our country. That will be, in my estimation, maybe 1 out of 1,000 if you're on my program. In other words, I haven't seen Alzheimer's dementia develop in anybody who's been on my program because I'm hitting all sides of it. Remember, with the oral chelation, I'm enhancing the ability to get the blood to your body, and with our now Zeo Gold, I can get all the lead and mercury. They've now shown, documented study out of Harvard less than a month ago, that the level of lead in your bones, the higher it is, the greater you are going to die of a heart attack, and even all causes of death are markedly increased by the level of lead in bone. And how much lead is in your bone? Well, we've done studies with Caltech, and Claire Patterson has documented all this, and your bones have 1,000 times more lead than any bones did 400 years ago. So when I'm talking toxins, please understand, I know that we are loaded with these toxins, and that isn't going to be an easy answer. You can't just run a magnet past your body and all the lead leaves your body. You have to be on a product like the Beyond Chelation and the Zeo Gold that will gradually push more lead and mercury out than goes into your body every day when you eat and breathe and consume fluids. So we have a lot of studies. And these studies were done because we know we're talking about a huge change in the practice of medicine. If everybody started understanding this data, let's just look at it. What is it showing? It's showing that why did we start studying northern Thailand? Because we wanted to figure out what were they doing different. Because here's the incidence of breast cancer in Japan at 21.9, China 21, Hong Kong 32, and then you come over here and here was the incidence in the Chiang Mai, northern Thailand, 13.7. So we knew we're onto something. That doesn't mean it was zero, and we understand that no one thing you do is going to take care of everything, but I have done a whole program on vitamin C and cancer, and I hope that you will tune into that webinar and learn a lot more about cancer, because we can have a world without any cancer. That's, repeat, Dr. Kobayashi, you go to gordonresearch.com and you put in the word Kobayashi, and up will come his article, which is published by the American Cancer Society, and it's called A World Without Cancer, and explains how we did all this. So yes, this is a part of my program, and there's no point in ignoring the need to stop heart attacks with BCI and the need to stop cancers with the total program, which involves detoxification and lowering of stress and simplifying the diet, etc. So it's important to see that the purestrol did not have any tendency to cause any proliferation. Now, if you were a young woman and you just wanted to have the benefits and you're still menstruating, I would have you use this on a cyclical basis, 21 days on, 7 days off. And then the question comes up, well, what about taking progesterone? Well, Dr. John Lee wrote the key books on progesterone And when you get all natural progesterone, not the synthetic progestins that are sold by your pharmaceutical company, it is a plus. It is enough of a plus that if you go to my website and see what my personal health program is at age 74, I daily take topical testosterone and progesterone, as well as taking something each day to protect against the potential feminizing effects. So I take my maca each day, and Kaizen, etc. So if we look at these early articles way back in 1960, Nature, which is a very prestigious journal, it's about as certainly as every bit as prestigious as New England Journal of Medicine, was reporting about the research of Dr. Kane. And Dr. Kane was reporting that the National Institutes, he had found that there was clearly an estrogen activity. And now you see there's paper after paper. And if you read these papers, it gets a little bit confusing because they're not always going to be on the standardized, purified material that is now available to you. So you could find an actual paper that might convince you, oh, this is terrible, I would never take it. And then you'll find out that that paper didn't even have any of the pruriria in it. They had a totally different product. So that's how the world of science goes. It can be a little bumpy at times to get the bottom line. What we see on the right-hand side here, anti-tumor activity. And so that is actually astonishing, because if you have something that benefits you so you don't have the incidence of Alzheimer's and broken bones and heart disease and breast cancer, it's just astonishing that you can have your cake and eat it too. It actually looked as though it's possible that one day we may find other cancers actually being treated with this product. So my friend that is Alexander Schoss spent many years trying to bring a whole package of material to the U.S. government so that we would get to the point that this would be on every health food store with the indication. As so as it is, the two places you can obtain it are Solgar, which puts it in health food stores, and the Longevity Plus. And Gita Jensen is a top molecular scientist, and she helped do these studies. So we have the studies, and so let's look at a short history of medicine. 2,000 years before Christ, how did we help each other when we were sick? Here, eat this root, it might help you. 1,000 years after death, that root is heathen. Here, use this prayer, 1850. The prayer is superstition. Here, drink this potion, 1940. That potion is snake oil. Here, take the pill. 1985, that pill's ineffective. Here, you need this antibiotic. 2000 AD, that antibiotic's artificial. Here, take this root. So that's changing as we understand more about the world around us. Puraria mirifica, the newest adaptogen. The data suggests a novel mechanism of action that could bypass the limitations of all the standard therapies now being done in cancer as anti-estrogens. So this is amazing that all these women with estrogen-positive breast cancer are being told they have to suffer with their hot flashes, and they've been given incorrect, incomplete information. So you'll find that the SERM has to be the SERM beta, and there are many people looking, and we've played with red clover and black cohosh. We have looked for different things. None of them had anywhere near the level of activity that is present here. So since we do have some 2,000 members of my discussion group called Forum on Anti-Aging and Chelation Therapy, FACT, it's fun to see that one of the participants in my forum, which any health professional is urged to join, and those who are not health professionals can learn a great deal from a blog site, which is the FIGHT blog site, which is found by going to limebook.com/fight. And there much of the material that is discussed among health professionals is going to be able to be discussed among non-health professionals in greater depth so that you can compare notes on what's working for all of you. When Dr. Passwater called me and wanted to do the interview of me that has been published widely as part 1 and part 2, which is available anywhere on my website. You just go to the website and you look for Puraria mirifica, and there are all these articles there to be read. And it's really fun to see that the toxicity has been handled, because if you're going to be helped by a product and you're talking about staying young at age 90, you may be on this for 25 years, so it's nice to know that this isn't just one of those things that's been thrown out and everybody puts it out, and then 6 months later the FDA takes it back when they find, oh, we can't use that. Here you've got the historical use going back over 700 years, and you have a lot of very bright people in the science field in Thailand who have looked at this from every aspect. And so the conclusion of research is that standardized Praria, which we call pure estrol, has estrogenic-like activity when compared with other drugs, and it gives an equivalent effect. Then we have the acute toxicity studies. So the studies on Praria in Tripella-treated female rats, and the results of the analysis showed that the toxicity is so amazingly safe that you wouldn't really be able to get an adverse effect in the normal course of. In fact, they use this as a drink. It's used as a celebration drink. It's used as a food. And so what is interesting is the changes that we see when we have a woman having a lot of hot flashes and she's facing bone loss and she's facing all these depression and poor sleep and all these other things. If we measure her levels of FSH and LH, they're markedly elevated. And we give this product and those abnormal stress changes go back to normal. But is it going to ever go back to the way it was before we gave you the Praria? And the answer is yes. This is not a permanent change. So we're not making you do something that you later could regret. The changes we see are transient, which means that this is a totally safe effect, which we call SERM beta, selective estrogen receptor. So we have the toxicity studies. There's a lot of studies that have been done. Is it going to cause an abortion if you give it to huge amounts of animals? All kinds of studies have had to be done. And in the future, I think because the prostate is a major problem for men, and we're now starting to think that maybe part of their problem there is the estrogen receptor area, very likely we're going to find more interest in Praria, and it's conceivable, since I don't know any way to undo the poisoning of our planet. And it's conceivable that since we have 6-year-old ladies, young girls, manifesting full sexual development, that the day may come that we may have to utilize the Praria for broader prevention to set on the estrogen receptor site with a natural product before all the toxins that we've released into our water, food, and air set on that side that are causing the epidemic of obesity and cancer. And does it have something to do with aging? Well, I'm stressing to you that I can't keep you young if I'm going to have hard calcified arteries, which is measurable. And we now have a vascular age test that your doctor can do called the BioClip. And we can now actually have doctors eliminate anybody needing to wait for a heart attack because they have a new test, much more sensitive than an EKG, that replaces invasive angiograms and tells us, do we have blocked arteries? And we can, obviously, I wouldn't be enthusiastic about the test to pick up blocked arteries, which is at premierheart.com, if I didn't have the fact that we know that we can take a bad report and make it better. We can take an artery. If you're a 50-year-old and your blood vessel tests to be age 70, that's bad news. But we can change it. That's the nice thing. So I'm very optimistic that we have the tools today. And one of the key tools is this Praria, because it has the ability to do for us what no other compound that we have found can do. It sits at that estrogen receptor, and there are so many estrogen receptors throughout our body. So when we talk about Alzheimer's and senility, you can see with our Alzheimer Research Foundation telling you that 1 out of 2 Americans at age 85 can face being hospitalized for the rest of their life with dementia. I'd like to change those odds. And it seems very clear that if we look at neuronal survival, remember, every brain that we look at has plaque, and that plaque always has things like infection, and that plaque always has things like heavy metals and toxins. And since we have the experience to know that, I came up with my FIGHT program, and my FIGHT program is how to stay healthy and deal with the multifactorial nature of the challenges to our health, which is unhealthy food and infection and genetic changes due to the presence of things like bisphenol A and phthalates that are in our water, food, and air. The average person today has 10,000 times more phthalates in your tissues, and again, that has an adverse effect on your estrogen receptors. But today, a lot of people have been interested in noni juice and other things, and we want you to know there's a great ORAC value with Prairie itself. We also want you to know that the university students were able to present these exciting studies, and this was in work with the University in Edinburgh of the Scottish section of the Nutrition Society. This was all the important work done by Margaret Ritchie. In Margaret Ritchie, this is the key to all of the things we've been talking about, because once you take this slide, you can take this to your gynecologist, obstetrician, your physician, who says, oh no, I don't think they couldn't be, it can't be true. There couldn't be something that will stop hot flashes and depression and vaginal dryness and broken bones that would be safe. You're going to get an argument. And so we would like to encourage you to take in this particular slide, April 7th, 2009, is the key release of the fact that we do have the data to definitely state this is not going to let you develop cancer, it's going to help prevent cancer. And so then we get into estrogen stimulates nitric oxide production, which is interesting because as you study nitric oxide, it was the molecule of the year a few years ago, that largely controls the warmth of your hands and feet and the circulation to your eye and how good your vision and memory. Nitric oxide is a really good guy, but it is something we prefer to have your body make itself. Now, one of the reasons a lot of people have been so happy about the use of intravenous and now oral chelation in the form of beyond chelation improved is because we always see enhanced blood flow, which we can measure with so many ways. I mean, the temperature of your feet tells you a lot about, or the blood pressure in your ankle. There's many ways to know what your circulation is. You don't have to fail an EKG treadmill study to know the status of your circulation. But it's really nice to know that Prairie is helping, and it's helping it through this basic nitric oxide mechanism. So will it be good for your cholesterol? Yes, it will increase the right kind of HDL better than anything we did with any of the soy products. The soy doesn't hold a candle compared to the effects that we're seeing with this. So this is taking you back then maybe to the witch doctor, because this has been used historically. And the product that is available through Longevity Plus is called Herbal Remedy from Thailand Plus. And we put in this product in its current form. We have given you a second product that has been widely popular, sold by Longevity Plus, called Beyond B12, a sublingual form of methylation support, because we all need our memory. We deal with so many complex issues today. And so in this product we have given you all forms of B12 and folic acid that will give you the optimal functioning, and we put it in a sublingual form. So when you get your HRT at this time, it will have the combination of the additional B12, which many women just say that if they put one under their tongue when they're having a bad day, or they're just feeling tired, or they can't think, or their head, just the B12 seems to be miraculous, because if you get into the issues we're dealing with, I keep talking about toxins in your body. And we do know that Duke University has done the studies. Randy Jirtle, J-I-R-T-L-E, is the guy that did the studies. His studies condemn beyond any question the bisphenol A. Now, bisphenol A, that's the hardener that makes those plastic water bottles harder than it would be with just the phthalates, P-T-H-A-L-A-T-S. And so what have we got? Randy Jirtle wanted to figure out, well, how safe is this? So they took, just like a lot of women today when they want to warm the baby's formula, they might stick it in the microwave for just a little bit. But they might have it in a container, plastic container, that they were going to give the baby's formula to the baby in. Well, just one exposure of that formula in that plastic container, adding the microwave, was enough to permanently change the agouti, brown, lean, healthy mice so that all of their offspring become fat, yellow, and diabetic. It sounds a little like what happened to America. We have an overweight country of diabetics. So when we look at what we see with Randy Journal was able to show that bisphenol A is not safe, and yet FDA came out with a report a few months ago trying to cover everybody's tracks in the industry and say, oh no, it's fine for you. A lot of top scientists have reared up, and I think we're going to get this clarified so that the FDA will have to tell the truth. But how does all this relate? Well, we in America have an epidemic of ill health. And if we start to realize that here is a product and a concept that is admittedly not going to get covered by anybody's Medicare, it's not going to be covered by anybody's insurance, but it gives you something that gives you hope that we can put real meaning to those extra years that is being added to all of our lives by enjoying high health. I'm at 74 enjoying higher health than I had at 54 or 34. So it is very important to understand that some women are going to want to be on the Beyond B12 because their needs for B12 are going to be quite high because it ties to methylation. And what Randy Journal showed on these agouti mice was this, that once all the offspring had this permanent change to their genes, so that's one of the reasons for the epidemic of autism, which ties to a genetic change, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, I thought genes change very slowly. How could you go from, none of my parents had any of this stuff of autism. How could they change overnight? It is because these toxins that I'm so upset about, in which I wish we actually had already the HANE, the Health Assessment Nutrition Education Act, has paid for 4,000 Americans to have this very expensive blood test that I wish everybody had with Mount Sinai School of Medicine. When you send 20 tubes of blood and a check for $4,900, they send you a report of the 240 chemicals that they can measure for your $4,900 and tell you how high you are on these bad things. And when you see your level of phthalates and then you read up what they do, you'll start to understand there's no confusion why we are having this epidemic of ill health and cancer and obesity. It's all here in front of us. And so the cancer stories, if you took a tumor out of a woman's breast and you had a lot of money, if you analyze that tumor for lead, mercury, and cadmium, it will be amazingly high. If you analyze it for dioxins, PCBs, phthalates, etc., it will be amazingly high. If you analyze it for infection, it'll have Coxsackie, chlamydia, etc. So you sit there and say, well, wait a minute. Well, what's causing the problem? If it's got the lead and the mercury and the phthalates and it's got the virus, and how do I undo this problem? Because that's why I wrote my FIGHT program, which is another webinar that you can play by going to the Gordon Research homepage and click on it. You'll see that I've tried to put together a way that you can deal with the fact is it isn't fun for so many people to have ill health. And if it starts with F, which is the food, and the food is obviously devitalized, you don't have food that's raised on organically balanced soil for most of us, and you always have increasingly a large number of people who have leaky gut, probably partly due to the chemicals and the insecticides, pesticides, and the genetically modified food that we eat. But if you have a leaky gut, what does that mean? It means that when you drink milk, or you eat some wheat, or you have some corn, or you can, any of those can get into your bloodstream because the gut wasn't tight. How come the gut wasn't tight? Because you weren't lucky enough to have known about Beyond Fiber, and you weren't lucky enough to know why I have everybody on some kind of a probiotic every day of their life. But so the food gets confusing because we need the food supplements. We have the epidemic today. Everybody admits that we don't have enough D in anybody, and if you start becoming expert on magnesium, there's not enough magnesium, there's not enough selenium, there's not enough chromium. So the food, the F is which food supplements do you need, and which food should you stop eating, and what foods might be safe to eat. So the F is a big area. We could be on that for a day, which we'll go in and do another day. And the I is infection. We all know we have candida. We all know that now Harvard admits a month ago that the plaque on most people's arteries has cytomegalic virus, so we have infection. And so you go over to G, the genetics, and you say, wow, it shows that we have so many things that would cause us to not methylate well. Methyl is CH3. Where do I get CH3? I get it from the extra Beyond B12 and folic acid that Longevity Plus carries separately as a Beyond B12 product and has included in the current version of the HRT product. So why would I want to have this methylation support? Because without it, you can't get toxins out of your body. And I repeat, the people that I see in Bangkok, in Thailand, are healthier than the people I see on the street here. But we've been able to find that they really have done a great job of limiting largely the level of insecticides, pesticides, and chemicals that their people are being exposed to. So I'm only tying it all together in your mind to have you understand that you shouldn't feel guilty if you find that you need to take extra Beyond B12, our sublingual thing, twice a day during your menses, and that way you have no migraine. I mean, there's always people that will learn a nutrient that changes their life, but you need to know one of the reasons for it is because your body has been really knocked by these chemicals, and nobody has put all the chemical story together. If you have lead and mercury and bisphenol A and phthalates and dioxins and PCPs and polyfluminated diphenyl ethers, which if we now know is knocking your thyroid and all your other hormones out. Think about that. How many people have low energy? Half of your friends? How many of them would assume because they're low energy and overweight that maybe they have a thyroid problem? Well, yeah, and then you could give everybody thyroid, and that certainly is not a bad step, but why isn't their thyroid working? Then you start to say, well, gee, I heard that there's some toxins in my bodies that might not be good for my thyroid. And one would be the flame retardant that's in everybody. Every living creature on the earth today is loaded with flame retardant. We did it because we didn't want our babies to burn up in the mattresses we treat them, in their pajamas. But when we put it in the environment, it never went away. And it bioaccumulates. So now you've got these different toxins, and those toxins are interfering with your body's ability to methylate. And methylate is two big things for you to think about. When methylation is working, you have a chance of getting toxins out of your body much more efficiently, and particularly if you're on my power drink and you're doing the fiber and the extra C and the extra maca and the extra greens. But methylation is a key step for toxins to actually get processed out of the body. So now we have the F, the I, the G is the genetic, the H is the heavy metals. There's a person alive today that doesn't start with 1,000 times too much lead in their bones, and that now have proven at Harvard that the level of lead in your bones is totally predictive of how soon you'll tend to get your heart attacks and your cancers and your death from all other diseases. So we've got to get the heavy metals down to zero, but the other H, F-I-G-H, there's two H's. The second one is hormones. And what are we going to do with all this chemicals that are disrupting our ability for our own hormones to work? We're going to have products like the Praria, which is able to help overcome the level of these toxins. So the big picture, of course, is F-I-G-H-T, and the T is where the whole problem starts. The T is the toxins. And I repeat, when they tell you your child isn't learning well, give your child the E3MV, get the lead out of your child, and don't keep your child on Ritalin. Try to understand that they're not practicing good medicine because it's law in California that they should check the level of lead on a kid that's not learning well or thriving well or is violent. But nobody does it. It's law that they shouldn't just give a kid a drug, and it says in the PDR that the Ritalin shouldn't be used for more than a year, and they have them on it year after year because they're never fixing the problem. They're always just putting a drug in to hide the symptoms. Fortunately, Praria mirifica really addresses the problem at a very deep level. It has tremendous safety, and I really thank you for your attendance today, and we'll be looking for questions from you now. So thank you. This is Dr. Gordon speaking, and please feel free to type in, and we'll be able to see your questions, and I look forward to answering them.
Okay, Dr. Gordon, I do have a question. It comes from Linda J. Linda says, hi, Dr. Gordon. I am on bioidentical hormones, for example, biestrin, biothyroid, pregnenolone, DHE, testosterone. If I take Pereira, can I give up any of the above hormones, or is Pereira just replacing biestrogen?
The Pereira is basically just replacing your estrogen.
Okay, I have another question. This one comes from Myron, and Myron says, what is the benefit for men and at what dose?
For men, the benefit is because we too have these estrogen receptors in so many places that it was interesting. Our survey showed that virtually no man in northern Thailand is getting up at night to urinate. And of course, if you were the expert on dementia, you'd go broke in northern Thailand. So if you're the orthopedic surgeon, you go broke in northern Thailand. So those are the three big things: less dementia, less prostate cancer, and a lot less bone loss. Thank you for your question. The dose is just 1 daily.
Okay, and Myron has another question. What other herbs do you recommend for male hormone replacement therapy?
Good question, Myron. I push on everybody my power drink. And I fell in love with maca when I found out what a tremendous change it made in my sexual health overnight. And I became an authority on it to find that it tripled copulative activity of the rodents we studied. But much more important to me is that it was loaded with something called glucosinolates, which is another way of my getting around the fact that so many people stick their nose in the air when they're asked to eat broccoli, and yet without the glucosinolates, I have no way of neutralizing some of these chemicals in our body. So to me, maca is a friend, and I would recommend people take it, but since it's the turnip family, a lot of people stick their nose up in the air and still don't like the taste of it, probably the same group that didn't want to eat the broccoli. But the benefits are really quite strong, and the more you learn about it, it will do many of the things that the Pereira does on helping women's LH and FSH. So I really like maca as the second choice. And when you go beyond that, we have a product called Beyond GHS, and that has in it Mumio, which you won't learn about unless what we will do after I come back from Asia. We will do a webinar to try to bring you up to why Beyond GHS is so important in my anti-aging program, because I go to all these expensive meetings on aging for some 35 years now. And when we call aging, they have a name for it. They say one of the biggest problems is sarcopenia, S-A-R, and that just means, sarco means loss of muscle. In other words, you see these nice people at 85 years of age, they can't open the door as they try to walk into the restaurant because they've lost the muscle. And so we wanted to find a safe way of doing that, and I preferred myself not to take injections of growth hormone, so I have found a combination of taking my HRT and my maca and consuming the Beyond Growth Hormone support, which actually has peptides from the hypothalamus, and the more you read about it, the more you'll find it's quite interesting. There's a bit of proprietary knowledge behind it, so we tend to tell people if you're doing any kind of repetitive exercise where you could see and measure a change in your life over, say, a month, if anybody takes the 2 or 3, as a male weighing 180 pounds, I will take 3 at night, and that will be enough to cause you to see that say you were lifting weights, that all of a sudden you can do things you didn't do before. So whether it's running or jogging, so we like that. But thank you for your question. Next question.
Dr. Gordon, I believe that's all the questions we have for today.
Well, we thank all of you today for your participation, and we look forward to picking up with our webinars when I get back fully energized from 3 weeks travel through Asia, and I'll have a lot more exciting things, and we've already scheduled the first two webinars are coming up, are going to be on Beyond GHS, and are going to be on the Power Drink, because the Power Drink includes the Bioenergy C and the maca and my Total Organic Green and the Beyond Fiber, which is my magic approach, stabilized rice bran to getting bad stuff out. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon.